So a new video, guys. Thanks for checking this out. First of all, I do know I look like a bit of an idiot with this cap on. I thought in these times that we're living in right now, I'll go ahead and cut my own hair. And that just failed completely miserably. So I'm just gonna hide my head in shame, this cap on. Anyway, back to the main video. We're looking into Streets of Rage 4 that is recently coming out on April the 30th. Now this game is actually going to be made by .emu, and they've been a publishing company from France since 2007, bringing us games from the classic times to the newer consoles, working with companies like Squaresoft, SNK and Sega. Now this is their very first game that they're actually going to be building it themselves, and with this one they're going to be collaborating with members from Sega, actually the people who wrote the music, and also a member from who wrote the original music for Street Fighter as well. So this is bundling up to be an awesome package for us retro gamers. Well, if any of you guys actually owned a Mega Drive back in the day, there's a high chance of you playing the original Streets of Rage. As I remember back in the day, the original trailers, especially the Toys R Us advert, where a lot of the consoles were bundled with different games, and mostly with Streets of Rage. Now there's a lot of forms of way to purchase these games back in the day, which was the Mega Games collections, which I saw many of you remember. I think it was Mega Games 6 that actually had Streets of Rage, and I think there's a couple more. But you could buy the game on its own cartridge, and also it was came with a classic collection for the Mega CD. So we actually benefited with the CD audio as well, which I do recommend. It is pretty awesome. Now with my Streets of Rage 2, I got this as an import because my PAL edition, which I originally had, wasn't compatible with my modded Mega Drive, which actually has a 50 to 60 Hz switch. Now I go on about the benefits of 50 and 60 Hz in some older videos. So the input actually made me get the 60 Hz output and play the game a bit more how it was supposed to be. So that is pretty sweet. Well, later on in the video, I'll actually go ahead and do a quick history on how the game was originally released to where it stands today. So if you guys have never jumped on board this series, or even if you just like a quick refresher course, I will go ahead later on. Now, for you guys to actually keep my channel going, I've just created a Patreon page, and if you guys can even just chip in £1 a month and just to keep this channel going. I do love YouTube as a creative media. I do have a creative background, and I think this is a great platform, and I'm quite new to this YouTube channel, so if you can see my subscriptions and my likes, they are pretty low, but I'm quite new to this. But a simple Patreon sign up with just a little small donation, or even just click and subscribe, that'll be absolutely awesome. So let's jump into the quick history of Streets of Rage.
The game was first released back in 1991, and beat 'em ups were very popular in the arcades, and this actually brought that enjoyment to our homes, and perhaps becoming the main foundation and people's favourite to that style of genre. It was also matched by its awesome soundtrack that still resonates in today's times. It was developed by the in-house Sega AM1, and it was scored by the acclaimed Yuzo Koshiro and Motohiro Kawashima. I think I pronounced that right. The game introduces us to the three police officers, Axel, Blaze and Adam, and the main protagonist, Mr. X. His criminal organisation plans to bring order of crime to the city. The game is built using the same engine as Golden Axe that was actually released 2 years prior to this title, and resembles games much like Double Dragon and Capcom's Final Fight. The player must defeat each opponent to progress through each location known as rounds, to then take on the final boss, Mr. X. A unique part of this game in the series is a special attack. By simply pressing the A button, you call the police support, adding a special attack to each player that you can choose from. Now, not so long after, in 1992 and 93, the game actually made its way over to Sega's portable device, the Game Gear, and also the Master System, which was a console released prior to the Mega Drive. And these games are toned down a bit, and they also lose some elements like some of the levels and also the characters, which is a bit of a shame, but for the 8-bit console it still looks and runs pretty awesome. In the same year we actually got the sequel, which personally is one of my top games of all time, and I can always pick this up and smash a couple of hours of gameplay. The same team is now expanded with additional company to help and support with the demand of this game. Axel Stone, Blaze Fielding make a return, and the game introduces two new characters, Max Thunder and Eddie Skate Hunter, the younger brother of Adam Hunter from the original title. Now with additional characters, it really does add more of a variety of styles and gameplay to choose from. whatever suits you to get more enjoyment out of this game. In this title, Mr. X makes a return, this time kidnapping Adam from the original game to lure the guys out and take on the streets again. Standard attacks, which have been improved on and expanded from the previous game. Each character can now perform unique blitz attacks, replacing the police car from the previous game. Each character can now perform special attacks, which deal extra damage and also attacking the enemies from all directions, at the cost of the player's health. The game is commonly regarded as the best entry in the series, the best game in the beat 'em up genre, and one of the greatest video games of all time. And just like the first release, the second one got his way over to the Game Gear and Master System as well. In addition of having different levels and inferior graphics, Max Thunder is completely removed from both of these releases. So now we're into the third release. Mr. X is back once again with illegal activities, this time replacing high officials with robots and creating an army of robots. The game features several enhancements over the last two games, with a more in-depth scenarios, a more complex story, inclusion of character dialogue, multiple endings, and better and faster gameplay. Now this is talked about quite a lot by being one of the worst in the series, which is a shame. It's only mostly due to how it was released over here in the Western world. Personally, my experience with this one is that I actually never knew this was released at the time. It was always kept quite quiet and the price was always too high to purchase. I've always been after this in my collection. It's quite shocking how we actually got the Western release. It features alternate graphics, sound effects, removal of characters, cutscenes and dialogue, with increased difficulty compared to the Japanese version. Personally, I would advise to get the Japanese version ROM and hack it into English. You will definitely get a better experience and a title more worthy into the series. And sadly, that brought us to the end of the Streets of Rage series, and it was never heard of again, with gamers and fans hoping for a sequel for the next generation of console that was coming out, like the Sega Saturn, the PlayStation 1 and 64. Personally, I was expecting an exclusive for the Sega Saturn, but nothing was done by Sega, until the game company Core contacted Sega directly to bring the series to the 3D world. That was later then renamed and changed to what we know today as Fighting Force, showing very similar elements and homage to the Streets of Rage series. This was cancelled by Sega as they were planning to do a fourth in the series themselves. Now this is just my own point of view, but it's definitely worth a shout out. If you look at the game Die Hard Arcade, it was released exclusively for the Sega Saturn, and it is a 3D beat 'em up, and how awesome would it have been if this was made into Streets of Rage 4 instead. Apparently at the time, Sega had produced an excess of inventory of their own arcade boards and acquired the rights to Die Hard license. With time constraints, but with no Die Hard game in development, they seem to use the resources that they already had, which gives me the reason of why this game could have been Streets of Rage 4. The game actually got a sequel for the Dreamcast under the name Dynamite Cop 2, which we also can purchase the original one from Japan's PlayStation Network. That is actually a PlayStation 2 port of the Saturn game that also goes by the name of Dynamite Decker in Japan. Yet again, we almost had another attempt of a release in the late 90s for the Sega Dreamcast. I managed to track down some beta footage, which is all I could find. It would have been a full 3D environment beat 'em up with a first person view as well. It may have not saved the Dreamcast, but the release would have been amazing. Apparently, Sega of America pulled the plug on this project, stating that the genre at the time wouldn't have not been successful. But how on earth they thought that this appreciated series would have failed is beyond me. Later on, there was some great support by indie developers and fan-made projects, most notably a company called Senile. They actually built a beat-em-up engine from the ground up and released a game titled Beats of Rage that was released for the Dreamcast. The engine later became open source, and a lot of adaptations and mods were created that you could use on emulators and most recently the hacked Mini Mega Drive and the classic consoles. One fan-made project I really enjoyed was Streets of Rage Remake, which compiled elements from the first few games with a mass of levels. It actually took many years to make, but the game was pulled by Sega themselves. But you can still download this game completely for free for Windows with the stable 5.0 version. Pulling this fan-made project by Sega was led as the company at the same time was making their own version, and this was only released in Japan for mobile, and as you can see, this game does look awesome. I've never played this game myself, but if this was actually released on console, this would have been amazing. Perhaps even if they released that for PlayStation Network, for the PS4, they could have built that on for Streets of Rage 2, 3 and perhaps even 4. But yet again, we've always been messing around with Streets of Rage, so I'm pretty glad now that later on we're finally getting the release of Streets of Rage 4.
So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you guys are going to download or even pick up a physical edition, which I tried to do myself, and it's a bit more expensive, but the actual import for 2 months from a limited run, yeah, that's a pretty lengthy time, so I might just go ahead and download, and later I might actually try and go ahead and pick up a physical edition, because that'd be absolutely awesome. So guys, thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to help keep this channel going, or even better, sign up to my new Patreon page. Leave your comments below, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.